Hi, welcome to the See You Try show. And so I'm happy that everyone has had to join us, and I have great visitors with me that I'm going to let introduce themselves and then tell you what I hope that we can talk about given this sort of really interesting period of time in our community. So can I have you introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about why you think I invited you?
Okay, well, I'm Chandra Summerville, and I am the Cultural and Linguistic Competence Coordinator, for short CLC, for the Champaign County Mental Health Board and Developmental Disabilities Boards. And I consider myself just a part of the faith community, grounded in faith and just being a part of the larger faith community.
Great. Welcome.
Yeah. Well, good afternoon, or whenever you are seeing this broadcast. My name is Reverend Janet Elaine Guthrie, and I'm an ordained Mennonite minister. I'm the retired pastor from First Mennonite Church, and currently serve as a spiritual director and someone involved in a variety of community advocacy. So, I'm delighted to be here today.
And we're happy to have you.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
My name is Sabirah Leonard, and I'm the program assistant for See You Try. I'm here to continue the conversation that we've been having about trauma and how we all play a part in our community in helping build resilience, but then also here to learn more about what you have to share.
Wonderful. So I reached out to both of you because when I started hearing the news unfold, we were sort of coming off, I was in places and spaces and people were talking a lot about Tanisha's murder, and we had also had a number of homes that were shot at in Garden Hills, and so people were, every place I was, people were just talking about increasing stressors. And then on top of that, we get, the coronavirus like changes in world sort of hit upon us, and I said, okay, it's Women's History Month. Who do I reach out to as strong women who could give voice to talk about how to have hope in the middle of times of community stress and trauma. We talk a lot about being a trauma-informed community, but not about what it means to be a resilient and well community. So I thought, hey, you two are amazing women who could give voice, and so I thought that we could sort of have a conversation about what you see as community stressors. I highlighted a couple, but also we can have just a conversation about where's the hope and solutions and strategies. So hopefully we can enjoy that conversation together. So that's the first question. I mentioned a couple of community stressors. What do you see as sort of happening now that, in terms of what you're experiencing that might be bothering people or worrying people?
One of the things that I have noticed was levels of anxiousness. And what I have noticed is just the uncertainty of things. And what I've also learned is that then there's also a community that's just not anxious at all. They're just, I think, so immune to just surviving, where they are just kind of almost waiting to just say, if I'm going to die, let me die happy. And so I think that there is some kind of just being desensitized to just what traumatic events are happening. And then there's another extreme when there are people who are in power that become anxious. Then there are things that automatically shift and change. And so I'm often wonder, just looking at those two scenarios, how they are married and also how they are coexisting in our community right now.
Yeah, and so that's a great observation, Janet.
It is, and I think to piggyback on that, the fact that people will respond differently to the anxiety that is there, and especially the pandemic now, and all of the ways in which our daily lives are being dramatically turned upside down, coupled with the economic uncertainties that surround all of the measures that are being taken with the shutdowns the like. So it seems to me that how people respond to whatever fear they have means that we can either sort of, as you're saying, sort of either withdraw or sort of become numb to it, or we can gather ourselves. And we may not be able to gather physically. We're talking about keeping our distance in that way. But we gather in other ways, showing love and compassion. And, I just made a little list of the things that I've been observing already that I find are really wonderful signs of how members of the community are, in fact, responding and providing for what I consider to be signs of hope.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So I might save that and circle back around
Okay.
because I think Chandra said something that is absolutely fascinating that we've talked about regarding trauma. That people who maybe are experiencing adversity or chronic trauma may be sort of numb to the experiences, and in some ways that might make them more vulnerable. And so if we were going to think about sort of messaging or a hope or a wish for people who are working with, serving, supporting, or the larger community about those folks who are in chronic adversity, what would be the messaging? What would you want people to know? Because those aren't folks that might are necessarily taking advantage of the things that we're going to talk about regarding services and support. What would be the messaging that you would want to say?
Well, a couple of things. One would be actually to figure out what you do have control over. I think during these times that when you feel your powers taken away or you don't have control, you do the things that you can gain control over. So this may be a time when you can do something within your home, like that project that you have put off for months or years. This may be an opportunity to actually reconnect with your family in a way that you never would have been able to because you all actually do have the time to do it. And when I say the time to do it, because there are spaces where you're not able to congregate and gather as much. And when we talk about gathering and coming together, they're just encouraging that if it's not more than 50 people. I think that is also scary for some people because they're like, well, what am I going to do? Because there is an assumption like that I can't be around anyone. And that's not true. It really is encouraging small gatherings and not touching while you are gathering, but it's also an opportunity to reconnect. And then also encourage people to set up some kind of ritual that you can continue to do during these stressful times.
All right. Those are great strategies. I'm going to say that I saw something on MSNBC that I'm stealing. So we're going to share. But any other thoughts and comments and that sort of summarizes what you were suggesting, Chandra? Any other things that you might want to add?
Well, these are great suggestions, Chandra. I'm also struck by the fact that when people are given the sense that they can make a difference, that there are others, as you say, they may be reconnecting, for whom they could do a very valuable service to protect them. For example, an elderly person who really shouldn't be out, even in a small gathering because their health, or someone else with compromised immune system. Do they need groceries? What do they need? And I think we know that when we are focused on another's well-being, if we're able to, if our own health allows us to do that, mental, emotional, and physical, then that is both its own satisfaction and reward and a sense of purpose in the middle of a time when perhaps things seem to be at a standstill. So I just add that because I think your observations are beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Sabirah, you are the youngin in the room, and if you had advice, given what we're talking about in terms of this conversation, for 20-somethings around who, right,
Yes.
who may not be necessarily identified as fragile populations, or may not be folks who are inoculated to adversity, right? Like, so what would you want to add to this conversation, or how do you think that this might be impacting the 20-somethings?
I know that there is a lot of concern around, like, where is this going to lead you, whether it be like school or where you're working, especially like for students on campus. However, I think this is, like you said, poses an opportunity to volunteer and extend the services that you can do, because, like, you have power to do things that will impact somebody else's life. And so if you are in a situation where you don't have as many health concerns, or you aren't, you don't have like a compromised immune system, and you are able to help with groceries, or give someone a call who's at home and they feel isolated, or if you're able to get together in small groups to assess like what types of things that people in the community are looking for, then, and you have the means and the opportunity, this is the perfect time to do it. I know that there is even a sign-up sheet on our MSW page for volunteers that are able to give transport food and items to families in the community. And so, especially with the closings of all the places around us, including schools, and a lot of people who depend on those meals and that sense of like coming together and like feeling as though they have something to do throughout the day, just doing those little things will make a huge difference.
Wow. So you all kind of hinted at something, and so I told you I stole generously, and I want to talk about what we as a community can do to promote resiliency. But there was a doctor on, and I didn't get her name, but she sort of simplified what we think about in terms of building personal resilience. And she said that during this time, we should always be doing things that are mindful, right? Like, so that are promote mindfulness, promote like that stillness. I always think that it can take on a lot of different fashions. It doesn't have to be some YouTube video or some formal program. There are just lots of ways that we get grounded in ourselves to sort of calm our anxieties. She also said, this is what you just said, Chandra, that we should also look for this as an opportunity to develop mastery. Like, if there was that project that you were working on, if there's that family activity that you could do to improve competencies or skills, and it also improves our mental health, right? We know part of our mental health wellness and recovery is when we feel like we're making a difference and that we can be accomplished. She said we should be using this time to promote movement. And everybody thinks that, okay, so social distancing means that you can't go anywhere, but it doesn't mean that. It just means that we get out in nature and that we take a daily walk. And these are all the things that we know physiologically help people heal from trauma and adversity is moving. And so there's tons of opportunity. And what she said is everybody should be moving at least twice daily, right? And then last but not least, she said, if you think about resiliency, when we are doing things that are meaningful, so which is what you said, Janet, is that when we're doing things that are meaningful, we can deal with adversity well. And so I hope everybody has their 4 M's and sees that as a marching order, that there's a lot of things that we can do with stress. And even people who may be experiencing adversity, if they're just building in their lives, like some movement, some mindfulness, some meaningful, even in not minimizing the practical and basic needs that people will have, and I'm sure we're going to talk about that now. There's a lot of real practical things that people need, but there's also some self-care things that you can control that might help promote your sort of recovery. So perhaps that's a great segue, right, to start talking about what as a community we need to be doing and what might be out there to help folks who are really going to be adversely impacted by changes that are happening. Their lives probably already contracted by things that weren't sort of global pandemics. You know, all of this, right? Trauma, stress begins at home. But now this is an added layer of pressure for a lot of families.
Sure. So I think one during this time is getting correct information, actually seeing accurate information. So I think about even in the death of Tanisha, when it was first announced, it was announced that it was a gun incident. And then the information changed that it was not a gun incident. And so that kind of taught me about who and where my sources of information coming from is facts, and making sure I don't report it. Because I think oftentimes in stressful times, we report the first information that we get because we think it's truth. I call that a network. And the network sometimes can often be off. So just making sure, like during these times, that we get accurate information. The Champaign-Urbana Public Health Department is absolutely amazing right now. They are giving a lot of resources, and they're not just utilizing the resources that they get in-house. They are collecting them and compiling them from the entire community. So I would encourage you to send these 4 M's.
I would. Okay.
If you, you know, just share the link if you could.
Okay.
Because I think that might be helpful for people to remember and chew on. Like, I can remember the 4 M's, you know, but just, I think that's an opportunity to do that as well.
And I just would add in that the Public Health Department has established a hotline for people, and so I can just give that information, but we want to be sure everyone knows that they have a place to call if they have a special worry or need some information that they feel is not available to them in the news or on a website or whatever.
So, however, they're asking people to separate the practical issues versus the sort of generic vanilla worries. So we would hope. So Finn, I would love for you to share the information, but we just got off the phone where they were like, we're getting a lot of worried, anxious calls, and they want people to sort of say the public health kind of calls, but I'm going to make sure that I give information about where you can go just read on your own before you phone call. But please share.
Exactly. Do your own due diligence and then
call.
Then call. But it's 217-239-7877.
Yes.
So.
And then we also...
Yes, please. Thank you for sharing that. That's very helpful. But they were just like, a lot of folks are calling, and that it doesn't create room for the kinds of calls that they can be most helpful at. So they said today, like, make sure that you check out their Facebook. They're doing Facebook Lives in English and Spanish. They have tip sheets in French in all the various languages. So utilize them as a great resource.
And then also, if you are feeling anxious, there is a crisis line here in town that you can call and actually speak with a mental health counselor. And that number is 217-359-4141. And I would encourage you to call that. If you do need to just kind of process with someone, that is what that number is available for. And thankfully, there are a lot of psychological first aiders and mental health first aiders in our community right now that could also be providing that. And so I'm going to actually plug and encourage those psychological first aiders, like, use those action steps. Like, this is a very good opportunity to implement those action steps right now.
And then I'm going to do a plug. If you're a congregation and you want to be trained in psychological first aid, we can offer that for free. So call us, because we can't do it by group. We could have a video. We could do it by video, or at least get you connected to the online training, because they're really practical tools that people should be able to use, along with I was not aware of this resource, but there's the Crisis Disaster Helpline that also is available for people. So it's Googleable, but the Crisis Disaster Helpline, and they believe that they have the capacity to take on all kinds of calls. So use them. But resources aplenty. I'm going to make sure that I created sort of a quick tip sheet from the CDC. That's the Center for Disease Control, for the Substance Abuse Mental Health Administration, like all of those kinds of places to go to, because they have created great tip sheets. So we have 10 minutes. I know I told you it would go quickly.
It was,
I wanted to also, because there are a lot of things that people can do, and you're giving out great information, but what if you're going to speak to people's hearts and not just their heads, are there heart messages that you would like to share? You have both spiritual people,
Right.
big faith people. What else would you want to say to both communities, individuals that might provide messages of hope?
Okay. First of all, I want to suggest that what we might see as rather onerous tasks, even something as simple as all the hand washing that we all are doing. Hand washing is prayer. It is prayer across multiple faith traditions, all of whom believe that one way we prepare our hearts for God, we prepare ourselves to be open to the power of love, is by washing before prayer or worship or whatever. And if we can hold something so simple and say, this is how I'm thinking about the well-being of the world, because I'm washing my hands not just for myself, but for everyone I come into contact with. So, when you were speaking so beautifully about the 20-year-olds, it's taking the responsibility to say, I do this, and I do this as a prayer, because the pandemic will end. We don't know when, though. And we are going to need a lot of patience. And patience and hope go together.
Love that, yeah.
I was reminded by something I read just this morning that, and I'm not a Spanish speaker, but that the word for Spanish, in Spanish for hope, espera, means both wait and hope. Isn't that interesting?
Yes, yeah.
So we have times when we have to wait. We're taking more time, to be very intentional. And if we can do that in a way that keeps our hearts open, to everyone else and what they are experiencing, I think that will help us with this compassionate approach to ourselves, which we very much need, and then to all of our neighbors. So I was very moved by that way of thinking about this. And I also, because I believe so strongly that hope is active, it's an action as well as a stance, that there are ways we show hope, not we help each other, but we go ahead and we're sure we vote and we fill out our census form and we do learn about the resources and we reach out for help when we need it. And we try to build as much agency as possible. You spoke about this when we're feeling like out of control. How do I provide that for myself? And spiritually, there are some wonderful ways we do that. And I was thinking about singing. Now, I know our best singing is in church when we're together. And my church and many, many others are not going to be meeting in person starting this Sunday. Wow. We are meeting online. Okay. I still think that music and our capacity to sing, to share the songs we know, give us great hope. We can know that we're singing a chorus, wherever we are. So that to me is very powerful.
And we have found through lots of research and science that music actually heals in
Absolutely.
ways that a lot of other forms of talking or being don't do.
Right.
So Chandra, Sabirah, do you have anything else to add? Because we have just a few minutes in terms of wisdom that you'd like to impart.
I want people to remember that healing is possible.
Yes.
I think that we think that there's no cure for this virus, and there is. Even though there are people that have actually had it, have healed from it, and have moved forward, and that's not being spoken a lot. And I actually saw an article about a survivor from Seattle, Washington, who had contracted the virus and talked about her healing journey and how I think that that's not talked about. And so that actually gave me hope because I was like, wow, so someone has been healed from it. They got the care they needed,
Yeah.
and were able to still live very productive life.
Thank you, thank you. All
Yeah.
right, Samir, do you have anything to add?
I think one thing we heard earlier this week was that we can withstand this. It's very scary. There are a lot of concerns around your safety, health, your well-being, and so to know that you do have the power to withstand everything that's coming our way and that we will get through it. We don't know how long it's going to take, but we will get through it, so keeping that in your heart and knowing that.
Well, thank you all. And my final plugs are two. One is to know that we have been advocating for, and again, buzzwords, Champaign County to be a trauma-informed community.
Right.
And it comes, those advocacy efforts come from just an awareness that crisis will come.
Yes.
And a strong, resilient, loving, connected community that looks out, that is
For each
equitable, that looks out for each other, that has the supports in place, that can respond to people's hearts, heads, minds, and souls, is a healthier, more connected community. And so if we continue to build on those infrastructures and prioritize our connections with each other, our love for each other, our desire to be a beloved community, to be, to use Martin Luther King's words, the more when these things happen, I don't know if you've ever heard the saying, but when the world catches, when the world sneezes, really poorly disadvantaged folks catch a cold, right? And so we need to be having these infrastructures in place to protect those folks who are more vulnerable. And we're going to need to do that more. So my last other tip, and I got this morning, is we also need to not be selfish. This is the time where we don't buy all the toilet paper or hand sanitizer. We really need to, or we stay in where we're not feeling well, because it is in the best interest of other people. So this is where I think about, we are our brothers and sisters keepers, and that we just really make commitments to put each other's hearts, minds, and health first, and don't be selfish. So that's my little final tip. And this show, the Trauma and Resiliency, So You Try, is funded by the Mental Health Board, and it's an effort of the Champaign County Community Coalition, and we're really happy to have you.
Thank you. We're happy to have you, both of you, leading the way.